Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about the AI summit that is being held in New Delhi, in India, from February 16th onwards till February 21st. It was originally supposed to be until February 20th, but they have extended it by one day. The AI summit is being hyped as something very significant, and that it is going to be a game changer. It is going to establish India's global leadership in artificial intelligence. That is how much hype this particular summit is getting. There's a lot of talk about global leaders visiting. There are several CEOs who are visiting India, obviously. CEO of Google, Microsoft, I think, except the NVIDIA CEO of OpenAI and Anthropic, etc., are also visiting India. So the CEOs of many AI firms are visiting India. The regular tech companies are also visiting. And then there are some foreign leaders, especially Macron, the president of France, as well as Lula, the president of Brazil, who is arriving, I think, on the 19th, which is tomorrow. So let's begin first by wishing everybody Ramadan Mubarak. The month of Ramadan has begun. So I hope that you take advantage of this month and try to reduce the distance between you and your God. And so I wish you a month of spirituality, a month of reflection, a month of fasting, a month of prayer, and a month of charity and giving, and also increasing your knowledge and depth of your spirituality. So going forward, let's talk about this issue. So I'm going to explain some technical stuff in this conversation. So pay attention. Like, I will talk about what is a sovereign AI, which is an important assumption. So last year, in February of 2025, India and France hosted the first AI summit together. This was supposed to be the third way. So right now, the field of artificial intelligence is entirely dominated by US and China. So the French were very worried that Europe was being left behind, and so was the global South. So India's Prime Minister Modi and French President Macron got together to host the AI summit in Paris. And the purpose of this AI summit was clearly to establish some kind of an alternative to US and China. Already the world is falling way behind the United States and China. As you know, that both in the hardware as well as the software side of AI, the United States dominate, particularly because of NVIDIA, which is the main company that produces the semiconductors and chips that go into artificial intelligence. GPUs, etc. They all run on NVIDIA chips. And then, of course, in terms of the software side of it, all the new AI tools, you can say development, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Meta, whether it's Grok, whether it is Gemini, all of these are American companies which are leading. China is not far behind. So in that sense, the Europeans and Indians and people from the global South were a bit worried that the rest of the world is going to fall behind. And like the digital divide, we will now have an AI divide between those who have it and those who do not. AI is obviously going to enhance people's productivity without a doubt, and that is going to translate into economic gains and economic dominance, etc. So this is the second of that AI summits that is now being held in New Delhi. So the goals of these summits that India and France are sort of coordinating, and this time Lula is also joining, is first to address the growing gap between the top two, US and China, and the global South. So India is now promising to invest heavily into artificial intelligence to try and catch up. Now, there are many things that you can do with AI, and I'll talk about it in detail today in terms of research, investments, etc., and then the infrastructure of artificial intelligence. So the first thing that I want to suggest or remind you is that one purpose of this conference is to establish India. Well, I don't know why India keeps talking about itself as if it is solely doing this, because other countries like Brazil and France and many other countries from the global South, like United Arab Emirates, are also have a shared concern about the dominance of U.S. and China in artificial intelligence, and they're trying to. Now, the thing is that the U.S. Was predominantly worried about the potential consequences. So the U.S. has two-pronged concern. So those who are concerned, like in U.S. and UK, about the negative consequences of robotics and AI, and it could lead to basically job losses and devastation of the economy. And then there are those who are just excited by the promise of artificial intelligence, the huge profits that it is going to generate. For example, Elon Musk thinks that he's launching an Optimus Primus, Optimus, whatever his robot is. So this combination of robotics and artificial intelligence, he feels, is a $25 trillion market for him. So yes, there are those like Elon Musk and others who see a tremendous financial and economic opportunity and scientific progress through AI, and then there are those who see that there are social costs to it, and etc. So the third way, which France and India were talking about, is to try and create an alternative way of governing so that all the standards of artificial intelligence are not just set by the US. So far, if you go back and see, most of the scientific standards, etc., are set by Western countries. Now, apparently, India and France want to set global standards. I don't know how they could do that unless they are at the cutting edge of scientific research. If you're not inventing new things, how are you going to set the standard for new things, is the question that nobody seems to have asked the people who are running this summit. And nevertheless, so let's go. So that is one goal, to establish a third way other than China and the US. And there's this whole talk about sharing intelligence, etc. And there has been some development. For example, some French companies have come and opened offices in Bangalore since the previous AI summit in Paris in February 2025. And there has been some efforts by France to expedite visas for Indian engineers to go and work in French companies in Paris and other places in France. So there is some cooperation going on between France and India in trying to catch up with China and others. The second part of this is, besides establishing this, is this talk of sovereign AI. So what is sovereign AI? So as you must have noticed, increasingly, there is a disenchantment with globalization, and countries are moving away from the consequences of globalization and the global supply chain and the dangerous dependence increasingly on China. And the fact that China has completely dominated global manufacturing has made many countries nervous because they feel that things that they need for their national security are also coming from China. So there is this attempt to use national security to rejig the global supply chain. So we are talking about sovereign industries. So the idea is that, okay, our medical industry should be sovereign, our defense industry should be sovereign. So similarly, there's talk about sovereign data and sovereign institutions. So to create some kind of control on domestic data. Artificial intelligence is primarily driven by essentially driven by data. Without large amount of data, you cannot have AI. So all these AI agents operate based on huge amount of data that is necessary. So they are trying to control uh, uh, this this data part of it. So, so sovereign AI is an effort by a country to have some kind of indigenous control on AI agents. So you have your own data, you control your data, and you try to create AI agents which think in your language. So, for example, if everybody so far is just using OpenAI, and so if you're just using Chat GPT, I don't think that what ChatGPT is learning based on its data may be applicable to, say, rural Haryana or rural Punjab or rural Andhra Pradesh and Telangana and so on and so forth. So in order to be able to make it more effective locally, if you want to be able to talk in Telugu, etc. So there is this perception that countries should have sovereign AI. But in order to have sovereign AI, you should have the capacity to control sovereign AI. And I'm not very sure that all these countries have the wherewithal. And there's a lot of investments that are being promised now in artificial intelligence in India. There is talk about $150 billion worth of investments. $100 billion have been committed by Mr. Adani in artificial intelligence in India over the next 10 years. So by 2035, he expects to invest $100 billion, so about roughly $10 billion a year for the next 10 years. Microsoft has committed to $50 billion, and other from Google is about 15 billion. So there's a lot of promise of investments in India, but I'm not very sure that they are being labeled as investments in artificial intelligence. But I'm not very sure that they are investments in artificial intelligence. They are investing in the infrastructure of artificial intelligence. So most of the stuff that Adani is talking about is building data centers. Not only building data centers, but also building the energy resources. Data centers require a lot of energy. So they're talking about building sustainable sources of energy using the solar cells infrastructure, etc. So this is not exactly investment in artificial intelligence. You're creating these data centers, and then you're creating the power sources for the data centers. So the investment is going into power and data centers, but not exactly in developing AI tools and AI environment, etc. So I think a lot of the talk about investments needs to be taken look at as how much of that is going into research and development, and for venture capitals, for people who want to start an AI firm and come up with some new AI application. So I'm not very sure that there is a lot of investment going in that direction. Uh, there is no talk about investment in research at all. And about universities. Is there going to be billions of dollars being invested in producing high quality research in artificial intelligence at Indian universities? How are they going to get into the hardware? Which Indian company is going to compete with NVIDIA in producing the chips that is necessary for the hardware, for AI, for having the supercomputers, etc. I was looking at some data on GPUs, for example, graphic processors units processing units. Like CPU, you have GPU. GPUs are parallel processors, and they are very necessary for 3D, for graphics, etc. I mean, you can't have AI without GPU, and it's pretty clear that 70% of GPUs are in the US and 15% are in China. That's 85%, and the rest is all over the world. And if you look at the data centers also, I was very surprised to find out that Virginia is the biggest hub of data centers. In fact, one little county, Loudoun County, has about 60% of the global data centers. So Phoenix, Arizona, and some in Florida, a lot in Pennsylvania, etc. These are the biggest places where data centers are, followed by China and Singapore. So if you look at some of the top countries, India is not even in the third or fourth place when it comes to data centers. There's a lot of talk and hype, but not actual reality. There is a huge gap between reality and narrative that is going on in India. So let us hope that by the next 10 years, all this talk of investing $150 billion in research really happens, this intention to come. So like, for example, when the India says, I'm going to buy $500 billion worth of goods from the US according to bilateral trade agreement, people in India seem to assume that that's not going to happen. India is just saying that India intends to do it, but will not actually do it. But now when companies come and say, oh, we're going to invest $50 billion in the next 10 years in India, why do we assume that they're actually going to do that? They just talk. The CEO wants a meeting with Prime Minister Modi, and he's in that meeting and he's making this announcement. Uh, so there is not that. Yes, there are a lot of people users now. Indians have become the second biggest users of Chat GPT. That's surely because of the sheer number in the population. It's like saying that we have 2.8 billion thumbs. Obviously, you'll have 2.8 billion thumbs. It's not an achievement. You have 1.4 billion people, so you will have that. So yes, there are lots of people in India who are using ChatGPT. So there's a lot of this discussion about creating AI agents we can run on cheap cell phones rather than demanding high quality phones and laptops, etc. So there's a lot of this kind of application going on. as to how to bring AI into other aspects of the field, etc. Unfortunately, a couple of things have happened at the AI summit, which have proven to be very embarrassing to India. First was when Prime Minister Modi wanted to make a reel about himself walking through it. So they shut the whole thing down for 6 hours. People were standing outside in lines and they had to wait because Modi was going around making a video of himself. So he was making a reel, a selfie reel, whatever, with his unit. He's like uh, an influencer. When you travel abroad, you see all these girls running around dancing with 2 or 3 camera people making reels. Modi is also like that. So he's walking around in the summit. It took them 5 6 hours. They closed the whole thing down on day one so he could go there and make a reel about it. And unfortunately, a lot of people have complained that the stuff that they had brought to demonstrate at the AI summit was stolen. So there was a company that had some kind of AI generated clothing, I think, and they complained that their entire display stuff was stolen and it disappeared, and it's quite disappointing. And then, of course, the scandal that's stealing away the limelight from the artificial intelligence is the story about Gorgotia University, where the university basically bought an off-the-shelf robot from China and presented it at the conference as an innovation and product of the research of their university. Can you imagine this? This Gorgotia University is, by the way, very closely associated with the ruling party of India, the Bharatiya Janata Party, and they claim they bought a robot from China, and they claimed that they had invented that robot in their research at the university. And this has gone viral. So now, if you go and Google India's AI summit, the thing that is popping up is this false claim by the university. It's so embarrassing. And then eventually the university was apparently kicked out of the AI summit and they had to shut down their display panel, but not before they had completely humiliated the country as well as its claims. So it is kind of an emblematic of what is going on in India. There's a lot of hype, a lot of narrative, a lot of talk about things, but not really happening. I would like to see a lot more money pumped into universities to do research or private research institutions. I don't know if there are any in India. There are in America companies who do research. Like you could go and work as a research scholar for Amazon. They invest a lot of money in research and scholarship, and their research is applied research. So everything that they do research immediately goes into the application of the company itself. So I have not seen any allocation for scientific research in the area of physics, of mathematics, or computer science and artificial intelligence. That is what is going to drive. And then, of course, some kind of incentives for new startups to come up and venture capital available to these startups so they can invest. You may have a very good idea for a product and you may have the technical know-how to develop it, but without the funding, etc., it might take you a year to develop that product. So you need to have an office, a research laboratory, computers, GPUs, and several engineers to work with you while you produce that thing, which could take about a year. So you need funding for that. So I have not seen much of that. I was specifically looking at the conference at the AI summit to find out as to how much are they investing in research and R&D. There doesn't seem to be. It just seems to be that most of the money is going to go in the infrastructure of AI, building data centers, and the foreign countries are investing in, foreign companies are investing in India for two primary reasons. Because A, it's still cheaper to establish these things in India. But the second thing is that increasingly there is a backlash now against data centers in the United States. So there's a guy who's running for governor of Florida, and his number one goal is that he's going to not allow any data centers in Florida. Data centers are raising the cost of energy, they are consuming a lot of energy, and places like Pennsylvania and Virginia, there are people who are beginning to object to establishment of new data centers in their cities in the US. So they're moving out to the developing world. And, and, and also, I think that India is encouraging it because India wants to have its data in India. So if tomorrow Amazon sets up a big data center, I think it's planning one in Hyderabad, or Google is planning one in Hyderabad and one in Pune. So once they do that, then at least there will be some kind of a control on where the physical location of the data is. But I mean, when we talk about clouds, clouds are also just data centers, and they're physically located somewhere. And I think that is where India is moving right now in the short term. In the long term, I think it'll have to be invested in research and capacity, and there's so much of rapid development because the beauty of artificial intelligence is that it also learns by itself. So not only are human beings now pushing the frontiers of knowledge, but it's their product of their scientific research, which are the AI agents who are also pushing their scientific products forward. So that is an important goal that is going on, uh, and and so that is where it is. So is this AI summit going to be a game changer? In a way, it could be. I don't think that they will succeed in setting global standards. India and France and Brazil, not at all. They contribute to less than 4% of the global uh, AI infrastructure, literally less than 4%, 5% maximum. And so it is going to be dominated by US and China, and increasingly more because the US is investing more and more into AI research, etc. I mean, look at you're talking about 100 billion in India. Nvidia alone is $5 trillion now. So we're looking at trillions of dollars of investment in artificial intelligence, its applications, its hardware and software and infrastructure, and use also in terms of usage. Now more and more people are using AI and its tools in corporations, in public sector, everywhere, in medical healthcare, in agricultural products, etc. So I think, does India have? Well, if you look at the rest of the world, yes, India is at least having these summits, working with France and others. You don't see something like that happening in Indonesia. You don't see that happening in Turkey or Pakistan or other places in the world. So, in that sense, you could say that in the global south or outside the G2, and that is US and China, India is at least making some efforts to invest in AI and at least increase the awareness of AI. Hopefully, what you see, I'm not in Delhi anymore. I came back, and so I don't know what people are seeing there when they go to this AI summit and the conference centers. But hopefully, it will inspire more and more entrepreneurs to do research and investments and to start new projects in the AI sector. So I think is there a potential for it to become a game changer? Of course, there is a potential for it, but the investment has to be in the right direction in terms of research and funding and venture capital. If that is not provided, then all you're going to do is just establish large warehouses where data is stored, and that is not science. That is warehousing. So I think that is what is happening. And it is also possible that given the new geopolitics and more, shall we say, like the more India and France talk about sovereign AI, it is quite possible that if the US and China also start talking about sovereign AI, can you imagine if the United States bans NVIDIA from selling chips to India or other countries and prevents Chat GPT from being used elsewhere? Of course, they will lose billions and billions of dollars and making a lot of money, American companies, by providing services and hardware for AI, but it will simply retard the progress of science and growth of the industry. Right now, what is driving AI's growth is the American stock market and investments by Americans in artificial intelligence. And of course, the Chinese are not far behind. So that is what I wanted to talk to you about as to what is happening in India with regards to artificial intelligence. I spoke more with Satya Hindi today on the political side and political consequences of this. So anyway, so I will be happy to answer if there are any questions or if there are any interesting comments. I'll be willing to share them with you. But thank you for watching Conversations. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and press the bell icon. So let's see what questions are there here. Anaya Tariq, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Neeraj, the first comment from Neeraj Kapoor was about Golgotia University. It's pretty embarrassing. It's a third-rate university. It's a private university. Well, my question to you is, why wasn't IIT Delhi or IIT Kharagpur, IIT Madras at this venue? Why is there no talk about these research institutions there? And so, how are you, Pandeji? And Saira Kazmi, Khair Mubarak, Ramadan Mubarak. So to you too. Uh, yes, सर आपका इतना अच्छा जानकारी है आपको पाकिस्तान में स्टूडेंट्स और जर्नल लोगों को पढ़ाना चाहिए आप इंडिया के बारे में गलत बातें करते हैं what rubbish these guys are kind of a very strange thing what is wrong that I said today about India Sanjay and why do you keep talking about Pakistan it just tells me that you're filled with hate and you're trying to equate Muslims with Pakistan there are 225 million Muslims in India which people like you treat in a very bad way you are filled with hate. And people like this will not progress in this world. You will be consumed by your own hatred. Your mind will not be open to research, etc. So, yeah, you can focus about Pakistan. There was no discussion of Pakistan. We're talking about artificial intelligence and the future of artificial intelligence, and you're talking about Pakistan. That tells us where you are, you know. Anyways, India is full of such trash. These are the people who go around on the streets, killing people, beating up shopkeepers, beating up old people, raping women, and all. And this is this other side of India that is disgusting. SMS India, we Indians are users of AI, not India is a user of technology. It's the same thing. There's so much talk about India, IT, IT, IT. Look at all the major social media, for example, Facebook, Twitter, the only thing that came out of China was TikTok and then YouTube. All of these are Americans, nothing from India. I can't think of a single social media thing that has come out, and that is already of the past 10, 15 years. So the last 20 years, all the IT products that you've been seeing, whether it is iPhones, whether it's Apple computers, whether it is tablets, iPads, etc., all of that is coming from America and made in China. Nothing from India, just talk. Yes, you have thousands and thousands of people, and they've learned how to do programming and say, look, come to America and do jobs. That's it. Have not produced anything. There's no research or innovation going on. And the same thing is happening in AI. Name an AI company in India that the world is excited about. Look, what is Modi so bragging about? Oh, I'm meeting the CEO of Google. I'm meeting the CEO of Microsoft. I'm meeting the CEO of OpenAI. I'm meeting the CEO of NVIDIA. Where are all these companies from? They're all American companies. These are the people who are doing research. These are the people who are innovating stuff. What are Indians doing? They're coming and talking about Pakistan. They're obsessed about Pakistan. This is their whole, their brain is like just that, full of crap. AI, SMS is basically four aspects: hardware, AI core, training of all LLMs, and last is agents and application. We in India targeting last aspect, like we have Oracle, we are good users. Well, in the case of sovereign AI, that will go away. That's a good point. But what you're trying to do is that, okay, we'll use open AI and then make an application out of it, you know. So it's like saying we will buy the motherboard from India, from China, and then we will assemble it and then sell it as an iPhone made in India. So that is not research, that is not innovation, that is just use of cheap labor or cheap manufacturing costs. But that is not investment in AI. Now it's a different thing that, okay, there might be, let's say, 100 million people in India who want AI to speak to them in Telugu or Tamil. So you may develop an app which does what ChatGPT does, but in Telugu. But what you're doing is You're just copying Chat GPT and translating it into Telugu. So you're not getting ahead in the game. You're behind, but you're catching up. But unlike, say, there's nothing like that happening in Indonesian. There's nothing like that happening in Swahili, and nothing like that happening in, say, Sri Lanka. So yeah, you'll be ahead of Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Nigeria, but you're not in the same league as China and the US. I mean, China's entire digital environment is so different from the US. I was there in November, and all the tools that I use, Gmail, Google Maps, everything that I use, Expedia, for my daily existence, none of that was working in China. So it's an entirely different universe, even though the devices are also quite different now. Yes, Apple was there, computers, laptops, where I could see a lot of Apple laptops, but a lot of Huawei also. So yes, China is developing its own unique sovereign AI hardware as well as software. And it is also clear that some of Chinese semiconductor manufacturing companies have not only caught up with Foxconn in terms of the legacy chip industry, but they are also beginning to very quickly move on the AI environment, and it is quite possible that they might be competing with NVIDIA in 2 or 3 years. Uh, this is a huge problem. So, for example, one of my friends is a big tech entrepreneur. I spoke to him on this channel. His name is Farhan, and he is the only Indian who has his own satellites in space. Uh, and he was telling me that he needed a particular device. I forgot what, some kind of a transponder he needed it. And he was trying to get it done. He needed a certain amount of numbers. He makes a lot of amateur radios also. So he needed a particular kind of device, and when he went to Indian providers, they said, "Oh, it's going to take 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks." And then he finally had no choice, but he reached out to a Chinese manufacturer, and they said, "Well, we'll send it to you now. How many do you want?" And so that manufacturing side of it is also a technological edge that China has, and I think China has that edge even over the U.S. And I don't think Europe is anywhere in uh, in this race at all. This whole talk of a third way, etc. I'm not looking. I think the gap between the U.S. and China and the rest of the world is going to increase every day. Uh, T. Siddiqui, Ramadan Mubarak to you also. Yeah, this is very important. There is a huge crisis, and data centers is also going to do something for you. For example, here, like I was saying, that the one guy is running for governor of Florida, and his main agenda is no data centers in Florida. He's also against H-1B visas. But in Pennsylvania, I was listening to one of the participants in an election campaign, and he was saying that because of data centers and the huge amount of energy that they consume, uh, it is raising the cost of electricity. In the US, we need a lot of electricity. We use a lot of air conditioners in the summers, we use heaters in the winters, etc. So the cost of for ordinary people of energy costs is going up, and and if you have if you don't matter, that's where Adani is thinking of investing $100 billion, not so much in AI research, but in generating energy for these data centers. But you're right, it's going to consume a lot of water, and it's going to consume a lot of electricity, and it's not going to create any jobs. Data centers don't create jobs, they're just large empty warehouses where data sits in chips. So, uh, yes, it's going to be very profitable for the companies that are going to invest in it for data warehousing. But other than that, I'm not very sure whether, well, it's better than nothing, right? Mayur Deshmukh. Okay, India is doing a great job. AI summit. That's what we are talking about. ARC, lack of investment in R&D is the biggest issue in India. We do have ideas, but we don't get enough support by the government. I agree. I met lots of research. There is no funding at all available for lots and lots of people in various kinds of research and scholarship, etc. So yeah, this is an important point, and it's a widely known. So like if you go and look at research, for example, when the RWU came out, Academic Ranking of World Universities, ARWU. You can Google this. I'm putting the acronym here. RWU ranking. This is based on only research that universities produce. And so if you go and look at the RWU rankings in the top 500 universities in the world, there is no Indian university. About 111 are American universities and 108 are Chinese universities. So of the top 500 research universities, in terms of not hype and image, etc., but we are talking about just publication of research products. And you can't do research without funding. Let me tell you that you need funding. So, for example, I am just finishing a paper on grant strategies for small states, and I'm using the case study of Sri Lanka. And I spent a week in Sri Lanka, and I visited many think tanks and Colombo University, spoke to professors. So I spent a lot of time and money in actually physically engaging with Sri Lanka, seeing it for myself, etc. And then, of course, a lot of the other research is data based, etc. I'm able to sit down and instead of going and working and trying to earn my living by teaching classes, I'm able to sit and do the research, think through it, and write. So even for something so simple that I'm doing, there's nothing major scientific. I don't need a lab. All I need is a laptop and an internet connection. But even that travel to Sri Lanka, to stay there, to meet with people, etc., did cost. So this paper is going to cost me like $4,000 in research to publish a 6,000 word paper which talks about grant strategy for small states, the case of Sri Lanka. So yes, without funding, you can't do research. There's no doubt about it at all. Now, if you're doing scientific research, first of all, you need a lab. I remember uh, two scientists at the University of Delaware about 10 years ago won a huge $100 million contract from the Department of Defense. But after they won the contract, they realized that the University of Delaware didn't have a silent room at that time. There's a silent room is a room where if there's a nuclear explosion outside it, nothing will shake inside. It's a very solid kind of a room that where you do all kinds of research. So those two professors who got that big grant, they immediately got jobs at other universities. I think it was Johns Hopkins, which hired them. They went away with the grant because Johns Hopkins had that lab. So if you want to do research in scientific areas, you need investments in laboratories of high quality. That's why you don't see many Nobel Prizes that India has won. I was looking at Nobel Prizes for science. India has Indians have won 4 Nobel Prizes for science, 3 for physics, 1 for chemistry in the last 90 plus years. The first one was in 1930 by Raman, and he's the only Indian citizen to have won a Nobel Prize for science. So since 1930 until now, no Indian citizen has won a Nobel Prize for science. This is so much talk of Vishwaguru, we are the greatest thinkers in the world, we are the greatest civilization, blah, blah, blah. We have won nothing in the last 90 years. In fact, no Indian citizen, even Raman was not an Indian citizen. 1930, he would be a British citizen. India was a British colony at that time. But my university, University of Delaware, which is in the top 50 maybe in America, is a research one university. We won 2 science research, one in the 70s and one in 2010. One for chemistry and I think one for medicine. So my university has won 2 science medals. That is double of what India as a country has won in 90 years. So yes, how's that research happening? Because you're investing in research, you're appreciating, you're creating an environment, etc. There's some propaganda going on here. So there's this guy, Mayur Deshmukh. He's here. This is his job. This is his AI. I guess he gets paid for this, and he's doing this in many languages. So let me just get rid of him. Okay. What? How can that be? That is stupid. How can there be tax on research, funding research? In the US, we have something called 501c3 status. All these donations that you give to universities are tax free, which means let us say that I'm in a 20% bracket. Let us say that. I actually pay more than that. So if I have, if my income is $100, I pay $20 in taxes to the government. Now, if I were to say, take that out of that $100, if I give $50 to my university for a donation, then that $50 is reduced from my income. So now I'll be at $50. I'll pay tax only on $50, even though I made $100. So, so the donations become tax free. So it is possible that now that my income is only 50, my tax bracket might go down from 20 to say 10 or 15, like that. So there are a lot of tax incentives, and universities don't pay tax at all. So this is ridiculous. This is so stupid. Oh yeah, this is China investing heavily, subsidized funding to not just for universities, but also for private companies. If you want to establish a startup, you are starting a company, especially in manufacturing, they have subsidized it, given loans. States, provinces in China have taken loans and then given loans again to private sector at very low interest rates in order to basically subsidize. That is one of the complaints that America and Europe have, that China is subsidizing its manufacturing. And it is doing this because it's able to, because it understands the importance of this. WhatsApp University, yep. I don't know, man. I went to China from Hong Kong by car. So, these days whenever I have time, I think, okay, what should I do? My next show should be on, or what my next article should be on, etc. So right now, I'm thinking that I have still not done my YouTube show on Munich conference. I should do that. And then I'm thinking of an article that I'm working on Sri Lanka. I want to do another video on Ghalib. So I'm thinking of those things, right, simultaneously. So I was thinking, like, what should be my article that I write when I go to China? So I thought, okay, I'm going to write an article saying, when will India catch up with China? And then after going to China, the article that I want to write is, will the US ever catch up with China? Because Schengen and Beijing, they look far more developed and more advanced than than India or US, to me, clearly. Okay, Satish Kumar, I think I've got a few facts right. On tech front, India was ahead or on par with China until mid 2000s. Mid 2000s would be 2050, isn't it? Or about 20, maybe, and 30 years behind China now. I don't know about the tech measurements, but I do know that in the 1980s, India and China were on par economically, and now China is 5 times bigger than India. India is a $4 trillion economy. China is a $20 trillion economy. China spends more on research. China spends more on their universities, and their universities are ranked much higher than ours, especially in scientific research, etc. So no doubt about it that India has fallen way behind, and it's not as if the gap is reducing; the gap is increasing. But you're right about that. At some point, they must have been similarly underdeveloped and backward, and now the gap has increased. Europe is nowhere there. Europe doesn't have the talent. So in South Korea, in Seoul, I went to see one of these palaces. So I was standing in the line buy a ticket, and there was a guy standing next to me. He was an interesting fellow. So he was a Turk who was working in Germany, and he was working for Mercedes artificial intelligence unit. And I asked him what he was doing, and so he was saying that he's working on developing Mercedes's self-driving uh, technology. And so we started talking about self-driving technology. So I told him that I had just recently bought a Tesla, and I'm afraid that within a year or two, I will not be able to drive, because what I do now, whenever I go to bigger cities like New York or Philadelphia or Washington, D.C., I take the car on the side, put it on self-drive, and then I don't drive in these cities because Tesla drives better than me. It is safer. It has 12 eyes. I have only two. And so I said, it is quite possible that in 2, 3 years, I will not be able to drive in cities because I'm so dependent now on self driving. And so we started talking about the comparison between technologies and as to how uh, most of Tesla's technology is software. It has only 12 cameras, and based on those 12 cameras, it's doing everything that it is doing. Whereas uh, Mercedes also was using radars for its lane changing technology. And then there's a blind spot as to how do you see what is in your blind spot. You can see it on the TV screen. That was being shown by radar, not by cameras, etc. So we were talking about it, and he was conceding that the amount of money Tesla was spending on research far exceeded what Mercedes was spending. And of course, I asked him this question as to how many people from India were working in his unit, and he said there were quite a few. He didn't have any idea. He says there were none in his unit in the self-driving side of it, but he said that in the AI unit, which is much bigger than just the self-driving, there were many Indian engineers also. So Europe, I don't think, is going to be getting ahead of US or China. They're going to try and use a lot of Indian engineers. Why do they need Indian engineers? Because they're not producing their own. And why are they not producing their own? Because their universities are not graduating enough engineers, which means that there's not enough investment and research in science. But you must understand that. Take the case of France and Germany. Who is India buying jet fighters from? India is buying 4.5 generation Rafale fighters now, 114 from France. India is incapable of making a jet fighter with all its stock. France doesn't have a fifth generation fighter. None of the European countries have. Only China, Russia, and the US have a fifth generation fighter. So Europe is not there, whether it's defense technology or IT. Can you think of any hardware, software, any device that has come from Europe in the past few years? Nothing. I can't think of anything. So they have manufacturing technology. You can see German technology when you drive a Mercedes or a BMW or a Porsche. You see them when you look at some of the medical equipment. You see German technology, but I can't think of anything German when it comes to AI or digital world. Uh, they haven't produced any new social media, for example. They're more into putting constraints on social media and the internet, etc., rather than investing in innovation. I don't see anything innovative coming out of it. Yes, there are stuff coming out of Nokia and some of those companies, IKEA and others, but those are not tech. IKEA is just wooden stuff, and some electronic stuffs are coming out of Nokia, no doubt about it. But if they are producing fighter jets such as Typhoon, the UK has one. UK is the only Europe. UK and France and Sweden are three European countries which actually produce jet engines. So they are ahead of India, at least technologically. But they don't have the scale and they don't have the innovation that is going on ahead. So we'll see. I'm not looking to Europe as a driver of tech. It's going to be, as far as I see, is the question is, will the US and China continue to compete with each other and push each other to move faster and faster? And will the rest of the world be able to catch up? Oh, no, 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 no. Lakshmi Iyer in 19 in the 2025 the February summit, which was jointly hosted by Modi and Macron. The total commitment that was promised was $98 billion, not million. We're not talking about 110 million. We're talking about $98 billion were promised, uh, uh, and in French AI investments at the Paris thing. Uh, but yeah, it is $109 billion. You're right. It's not million, but $1 billion. So you can see this. Uh, you're right. I think you incorrectly said million, but yes, this is the investment that has come. So what Modi has done is he's asked his friend Adani to say, "I will invest $100 billion." So India is trying to make it look as if more investments are coming in India. But the $50 billion that we are talking about from Microsoft and Google, 15 billion, that was all promised a year ago. So they're just repeating the same thing here at the AI. And they are not, like I said, investments in artificial intelligence. They are all investments in data centers. Uh, this is an interesting question. This is America's dilemma. They did not allow Germany and Japan to develop strong militaries after World War II. And so the US included Germany in NATO and has a military alliance with Japan and said, don't worry about your security, we will protect you. So these two countries invested in their economies and they boomed. So in the 70s and 80s, the slogan was that America and Britain and France won the World War II, but Germany and Japan won the peace. Because their economies were clearly down. Even now, if you look at the top five economies, Germany and Japan are two of those. So, but Japan has the technological capability of like going nuclear weapon within a week. They can do that. Uh, but they, so far, the US had kept them under pressure to have only defensive military. But now, under the Sana Takashi and the US saying that we are not willing to protect, you need to spend more on your defense to protect yourself. So the US calling for burden sharing, it is an opportunity for Japan to invest. So this could backfire on the US, where Japan could emerge as a major global power like Russia and China and eventually challenge US hegemony. So in trying to save some or in order to reduce its responsibility in the Indo-Pacific, India might be creating a monster in Japan. Uh, like I said, I was in China, and when I was talking to some of the Chinese geopolitical thinkers, uh, and I talked to them about whether they were worried about India's challenge, they were not. They were not worried about India as a military challenge at all. They were more worried about Japan. They said we see Japan as a rising power, and they're very concerned about that. But good question. Thank you for asking. And Japan is also capable of investing in AI, and it has some infrastructure in the semiconductor industry also. Yes, yes, SMS India. I have to do one on Munich, maybe tonight, inshallah. Yeah, this was shameful. I don't know. There's so much of bullshit going on in India. I'm glad they didn't at least have a whole pavilion full of for Gaumutra and Gobar research or something in artificial intelligence. Thank God for that. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit going on in India, unfortunately. I mean, how look at just imagine the environment for somebody to buy something off the shelf and claim that it's part of their in their innovation in scientific research. It's absolutely ridiculous. Become a laughing stock. Go and look at on X. You'll be surprised as to how many people are, making fun of that. What is this question? Do distribution of land in make country more prosperous better in North? There are two parts to your question. Distribution of land. So, according to the political science of 1990s and 1980s, where development and modernization was a big topic, uh, the argument was that countries which did land reforms developed, and countries which did not do land reforms did not develop. So South Korea, Japan, India also did land reforms. So compared to Pakistan, for example, Pakistan did not have land reforms. So there is an impediment because in Pakistan, landlords are also industrialists like Nawaz Sharif. They control huge swaths of land, and they also then use that money to control industry, etc. So there's lack of vitality in those economies. So land reforms were seen as an important precursor to development of post-colonial societies. So yes, land reforms are essential. And as far as authoritarian countries and democracy, no, look at the top 25 rich countries in the world. I'm talking about rich countries by GDP per capita. Yes, Singapore will show up, but most of the vibrant economies, top economies, are European and US and Canada and Germany and Japan and South Korea and Taiwan. These are all very strong democracies. So if you look at countries with more than 50%, 50 or $40,000 per capita income, then you don't see uh, authoritarian countries. Look at the top five economies today: US, China, Germany, India, and Japan. So, except China, the other four are all democracies. Yeah, Trump is taking credit for her victory. They have supported. But in the long run, in the next 10 years, if China, Japan about 2 years ago announced that it was doubling its defense budget. So I think it was around $50 billion. They went to 110 billion dollars in defense. I don't know whether they did it or not, but they were announcing that they were going to double their defense budget. And if Japan goes nuclear, it's going to be huge because Japan feels threatened by both China and Russia. So there are some island disputes with Russia, and so on more than one occasion, Russian and Chinese air forces together have violated Japanese airspace. In fact, in the past few months. So if Japan feels the way Europe feels, that America cannot be trusted anymore to guarantee its security, then it will go and become a major power. And once it becomes a major power, as Japan becomes more and more self-reliant on security, it will be less willing to dance to American tunes. So Donald Trump, in trying to reduce the cost of maintaining security in the Indo-Pacific, may be creating a monster, I think. All right, guys. Thank you for watching Conversation. We've done an hour of this, some very good questions. And I hope it was a great fun for you too. I enjoyed it very much. So please, if you've not already subscribed to the channel, subscribe to Conversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share it with your socio-political network. As far as cricket is concerned, I saw that India and Pakistan both have won their matches against Netherlands and Namibia. And so the entire thing is set. The only surprise is that Australia has failed to qualify for the second round. It's quite amusing. For those of you who can understand Australian accent, go and watch a YouTube show called Great Cricketer. Great Cricketer. And you can see those two funny guys, two Australians, talking about Australia's disastrous performance in this World Cup. uh, Australia has not really done well in T20 World Cups. They have won in 2021, but they've not really done well. So, but nevertheless, I'm a little disappointed that Afghanistan did not make it to the second round. But all the best to Zimbabwe, which made it at the cost of Australia. But other than that, all the other teams that have qualified according to seedings, basically. So there was no surprises except for Zimbabwe, Australia. So thank you for watching Conversations, and I'm predicting that the top teams which will emerge from those second rounds will be India, Sri Lanka, South Africa, and the fourth one, I'm hoping it will be West Indies. Take care. Bye.